Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com, and today a lot of you saw the results of the Your Black World survey on African American leadership. Uh, Basically, we wanted to know from our readers, a predominantly black audience. We also filtered out the African American respondents. We wanted to know how they felt about the state of black leadership in America, and basically we asked the initial question that says, "Are you happy with the state of black leadership in America?" And we told them to answer based on what black leadership means to them, because we didn't define it for them. And what's so interesting is that a full 85% of the respondents said that they were either somewhat unhappy or extremely unhappy. Only 15% said that they were relatively happy, or very happy. 4% said very happy. So to kind of analyze some of this and really talk about the perception of black leadership as well as some of the other survey results, I brought in Dr. Wilmer Leon, who is a highly respected political scientist. He's a professor at Howard University. He's also the host of Inside the Issues with Wilmer Leon, which comes on Sirius XM satellite, The Power, channel 128, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturdays. Did I get that right, brother?
You got that right.
All right. It only took a year, but I finally got it. But when you hear this, dissatisfaction that exists within so many people about where black leadership is right now, what is your first what's the first thought that goes through your mind as a political scientist?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was the distinction, as we talked about last time with the Troy Davis case, moment versus movement. And I started thinking about other black leaders, whether it be Sojourner Truth or Frederick Douglass, whether it be A. Philip Randolph, Dr. King, Huey Newton, Malcolm X, and all of those individuals that I've named were tied to movements, whether it was the abolitionist movement to do away with slavery, whether it was the equal equality and civil rights movement, A. Philip Randolph with the sleeping car porters, and um, of course Dr. King with the civil rights movement and whatnot. They were tied to issues and things that were bigger than themselves, and so by that then the issues were not personality driven, they were issue driven. And then you also had, because they were issue driven, you were able to look at uh, results, outcomes. You were able to see progress or lack of progress. You had Du Bois with the NAACP and so on. Today, because so much of our leadership is strictly personality driven and not issue related and movement related, uh, I think what you're getting is not so much an assessment of leadership as much as you're getting people's opinions of personalities.
Hmm. Very interesting. Well, Dr. Leon, I want to ask you about some of the other survey results. We also asked the participants, do you feel that white media plays a role in determining who the black leadership is going to be? Because we know that sometimes the person who gets more hit time on CNN and MSNBC, and sometimes even Fox News, God forbid, ends up getting to shape at least the white perception of what black leadership means in America. And when we asked that question, do you think that predominantly white media determines who the black leadership is going to be? A strong majority, 69%, said that they believe that they do. So, what do you think about that? I mean, do you think that white media or non-black media rather has a disproportionate amount of power when it comes to even deciding who our leaders are going to be, and how dangerous is that?
Well, I think the mainstream media plays a very important role in terms of the perception of who leadership is based upon the people that they turn to respond to particular issues. One of the things that I find very interesting is that, unfortunately, all too often, the only time that mainstream media turns to African Americans, whether they're in quote unquote positions of leadership or just trying to get analysis, has they turn to black people to respond to quote unquote black issues.
Hmm.
And so that, in fact, just that was one of the things that I really appreciated about Lou Dobbs when he was on CNN and, for example, would have me on as part of his talk show host roundtable. Lou would have me on to talk about whatever the issue of the day was, whether you agree with Lou's politics or not. He had me on to talk about whatever the issue of the day was. It wasn't, Wilmer, what do you think about what black people are thinking about this or that? It was, what do you think about A, B, C, or D? And I bring him up because I think he's very rare in that regard. Um, so media still has this bias, and a lot of it has to do with the producers who are responsible for a lot of these of what you see on a lot of these programs. They turn to black people specifically to speak only to black issues, and because so many of the producers of these programs are white, their Rolodexes as it relates to black people are very, very limited and very narrow. So they continue to turn to the same suspects. They continue to turn to Reverend Sharpton. They continue to turn to Reverend Jackson. And there are so many other voices that they could be and should be talking to that they don't.
Hmm. Interesting, interesting. And I know what you mean. I mean, it's funny. But Dr. Leon, I think you're being a little cynical here. I think you're going over the top, man, because those 22-year-old interns, they really understand what's going on. They know exactly how to pick the best people for the job. Yeah, it's absolutely astonishing to me when I have seen, and I've been on the good and the bad side of this at times, where I've seen
how both of us.
Yeah, we have. It just we see how little thought goes into selecting individuals who are going to speak on such important issues. I'll never forget one time when I got a call from. It was actually back when I used to do Fox News. I don't do any Fox News anymore, but back when I did 4 or 5 years ago, I remember they called me to discuss. I want to say it was Hillary Clinton's comments about American policy in North Korea or something like that. And I said, I'm a finance professor. What in the hell? Like, what in my background qualifies me to talk about this topic? And their whole position was, it seemed that, look, we know this guy. We know that he can communicate. We know that we've had him on before. He's in our Rolodex at the top. So we're going to call him. And that was just a glimmer of just how ridiculous things can be when it comes to picking the right person for the job. Now, the next part of the survey I want to ask you about is this. These are 3 questions, but I think I can lump it into one question. Number one, we asked people if they think that most of America identifies black leadership to consist primarily of Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. 74% said yes. They believe that most of America thinks that black leadership is pretty much Jesse and Al. When we asked them, do you agree with this, with those who believe that Jesse and Al constitute the majority of black leadership, 83% said no, we do not agree. We do not agree that Jesse and Al represent most of us. And then the last part of that question was, do you think it's a problem that people identify most of black leadership to consist of Jesse and Al? And 81% said yes, it is a problem. So it seems to me, Dr. Leon, that a lot of people are really concerned with sort of collapsing black leadership and sort of putting it on the backs of a couple of people. Not only does that not allow a range of perspectives to be presented, but it also puts a lot of pressure on those 2 guys. And it also keeps us in a state of rigor mortis where nothing is really getting done because there's a bottleneck in activity because 2 people can only do so much. What do you think about those results when you read them, Dr. Leon? And what do you think is the paradigm for black leadership in the 21st century that we need to move toward?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. One is, again, unfortunately, too much of our leadership is personality driven, not institutional based, and not issue based. So, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is when those individuals you mentioned do pass, and whether it's Reverend Jackson, whether it's Reverend Sharpton, whether it's Minister Farrakhan, when those individuals are no longer at the forefront, who are they grooming? Who has been groomed to take their places? And if our leadership were institutionally based, that would not be such of an issue because the institution survives, the institution moves forward, and whoever it is at the forefront, takes over the role of leadership. Now, the problem, now many would say, well, then what about the NAACP? Well, that is one of the institutions in our community, but unfortunately, we do not control as it relates to the finances and therefore setting the agenda of that institution. We don't really control the agenda of that institution when you look up who makes up the board, and when you look at who finances the operations. It's Budweiser, it's Coca-Cola, it's white corporate America. So we as
don't forget Wells Fargo.
Wells
Yeah,
Wells
we can't
Fargo.
forget them, the
You
predatory
can't forget
lender of the
Wells
century.
Fargo.
Yeah, go ahead.
And let me and a quick example of that. A couple of weeks ago, President Obama spoke at the, I think, like the American Jewish Political Action Organization. When you looked at the banner behind him, you didn't see corporate sponsorship. You didn't see Wells Fargo. You didn't see AT&T, Coors Beer. You saw the American Jewish Political, because they control their
Mm.
institutions.
Wow.
We don't.
Wow.
So that's why I'm kind of getting off on an institutional tangent, but because I think it's important to differentiate between leadership that is personality driven versus leadership that is institutionally based. If you were to go out right now and ask 100 people, who's the head of the Jewish Defense League? Who's the head of the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith? Some people might be able to tell you Abraham Foxman, but many people wouldn't even know that. No. But they know who the institution is. And I'm not picking on them. That's just to me, a very good example of institutional-based leadership that is effective in agenda setting, that is effective in impacting legislation and impacting outcome of the interests that they deem to be important.
Mm.
When you ask people about, we know Reverend Jackson, we know Reverend Sharpton, we know Minister Farrakhan, but from an institutional perspective, they are the institution. Their personality is what drives the institution. It isn't interest. It isn't historical institutional base.
Very interesting. Well, I agree with you. I think that it's time to really shift the paradigm in terms of thinking about how we view black leadership. It's not a matter of picking on Jesse and Al. We're taking away whatever they have established, because their contributions have been tremendous. But I think there really is a point where we've got to really critically assess what's going on. What the people want. What's actually getting done and not getting done. Because right now what's happening is we're like tornado victims sitting in the middle of a town that has been devastated, and when that debris is all over the place, you're not going to clean up that debris by relying on one or two people. You clean up after a tornado when everybody plays a part, and that's why I tell everyone, look, everyone's a black leader, whether you're just a leader in your family, a leader in your social circle, a leader in your own community. All of us can lead on some level in terms of carrying ideas and energy that will lead to a better community. So I encourage people to help Jesse and Al and others carry the load. Don't criticize, don't attack them, don't get mad because Al still got that perm, or because Jesse took some money from somebody. Guess what? When Jesse takes money from a white corporation and we get mad about it, almost all of us take money from some white corporation because we get up and go to work for them 40 hours a week. So at the end of the day, it's not about attacking anyone. It's simply about elevating and expanding and building off of what they've already done. So I think it's time to do that, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Leon. I appreciate it. This is Dr. Wilmer Leon. He is a political scientist. He is a professor at Howard University. He's the host of Inside the Issues with Wilmer Leon on Sirius XM 128, The Power, which comes on Saturdays from 11 to 2. His Facebook page is facebook.com/ is it Dr.
Leon's Prescription. Dr. Leon's Prescription at facebook.com.
And he don't need to be going around prescribing medicine, because this brother will get you killed. Well, take care, brother. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And until we meet again, stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone.